Third, setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo's dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart, umhoops.com. It is Friday, August 21st, in the endless summer. Dylan, how are you, pal?
I'm doing well. It's still got the warm summer days, but you get a little cool air at night. It's nice. Quarantine, I can go with that. A little worried that it's fall though, and we're still living this quarantine lifestyle. How about you over there?
That's a pretty good summary. I'm about to hit the road again traveling, so that's going to be weird. But I'm doing the BMW Championship in outside Chicago next week, and then the Tour Championship in Atlanta. And then in September, go off to the U.S. Open at Wingfoot. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. And
My
you're right.
Schedule involves the grocery store currently, and that's about it. So
nice.
Golf season picking up, though.
Golf season is very much picking up. Busy. Very weird time in all regards. But for the purposes of the pod, have you been finding content to provide the people with on UM Hoops? Why should they be subscribing or renewing this month?
There's plenty of recruiting content this summer. It's been an eventful summer for Juwan Howard. This week on UM Hoops, it's all about Frankie Collins, who we're going to talk about more in depth on this podcast. But we have 3 or 4 articles about Collins, his recruitment, and his game, pretty much everything else you could want to read. So go ahead and check that out on there. What do you have over at The Athletic?
Well, in addition to the golf stuff, I'll have the Michigan State of the program, which will run at some point, I think mid next week. Listeners here are probably well familiar with it. Every summer, kind of do a big overarching deep dive into the program, not only as a preview for the upcoming year, but also, some bigger questions about the overall kind of health and situation of the program. So, I'm not sure. I think like Wednesday, Thursday, something like that next week that'll run, and should be chock full with all kinds of good stuff. And I'm sure we'll have a podcast at some point to accompany it. And that's that. But for today, we're going to talk point guards. Old and new, right? Michigan losing Xavier Simpson, Michigan State losing Cassius Winston. Very much kind of seismic shifts, I think, in both places. Those guys are representative not just of like, a point guard on the roster. They were bigger than that. They were kind of transformative figures for each of their programs. So both places moving forward from that landed commitments within the last, 8-10 days? Does that sound right?
Yep.
Frankie Collins this week announcing that he's headed to Michigan. And Jaden Akins announcing that he's heading to Michigan State. So this is the next guys in line. They're both 2021 kids. We're going to get into each of them, give some thoughts on the commitments, and then kind of talk about the position at large and what it means to both spots. So we'll start with the more recent one. Fresher news is Frankie Collins picking Michigan. Not exactly surprising news. Things have been trending that way. But what are your thoughts? I know you've done a full breakdown on UM Hoops and all that good shit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really good get for Michigan, especially considering some of the circumstances, have missed out on a couple guys who maybe were priorities early in the summer, and then to come out and come away with a top 70 point guard at this stage in the process is a pretty good get, right? Collins is a little bit smaller. He's really a pure point guard, I would say. There's a lot of guys who are more combo guards or have point guard skills but can do other things. Collins is really old school, pass first point guard who I think you look at his handle and his crossover as really the foundation of his game. He's really good at breaking down defenders one-on-one, getting in the lane. I think what you worry about when you hear that as the first thing on someone's scouting report is that they're just out there looking for their own offense. I really would not put that label on him. His passing and his vision is really impressive for a guy who you might not really get that out of his highlights, right? So I think that I don't have a great comparison, but really a kind of methodical point guard, run the team, get guys in position, and good enough to create his own shot when he needs to, but maybe doesn't always look for that, right? He's more than content to run an offense.
Yeah, he delivers the ball.
Yep.
Right. There's a difference between guys who are good passers and guys who literally, get the ball where it's going and really kind of steer the ship. I think he's more the latter, right?
Yeah, he's a guy who even playing in a 2-point guard offense like he did at his prep school, Compass Prep last year, it was obvious that he was in control of that offense, right? He would kind of drive where people are going, what's going to happen, and then he can pass people into good looks, not just pass the ball to someone who's wide open. So I think you like that all on paper. He's a really good athlete. He'll have some highlight dunks, especially in transition. The question, though, is just can he shoot it well enough at the next level, because his jump shot is not really a big part of his game. He doesn't shoot a whole lot from three. I did watch one game. He hit 4 threes in the first half, and then I watched 3 other games. He didn't shoot a 3. So it's one of those situations where I think he has the tools to be a good 3-point shooter. Just needs to keep working on it and see how that progresses.
Yeah, I feel like any basketball person listening to this scouting report over the last couple minutes is just saying red flag, red flag, red flag. If all you hear is, yeah, great passer, great, gets everyone else involved, does everything for everyone else. It's okay, well then can he shoot? I don't know the answer to that. But what if anything does this being a player that Michigan went all in on tell you, if anything, about recruiting at maybe in a bigger sense for Michigan with this new regime? Do you see what I'm getting at?
No, it seems like you're getting at something he wants to tell you, though.
No, I mean, I think like at this time a year ago, or maybe even earlier this summer, people would have maybe been suspecting like more athletic, that combo guard like you're talking about, right? Like a Zeb Jackson's 6'3" kind of combo guard, really athletic type guy. Like maybe that would be more so of the direction that this thing would go into, as opposed to a more old school, right, pass first point guard.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because for a while this summer, I mean, the top point guard target on the board was Jalen Worley, who is very much not a pure point guard. He's this big guard who projects to be a point guard.
Good point.
So I think it's hard to make sweeping generalizations on the recruits you get, because obviously they're not the only recruits you want. And I think honestly, it says a lot about Juwan and his staff that they were able to adapt on the fly and still get a good player, right? Like they didn't put all their eggs into one basket without any other options, because the 2021 point guard class nationally isn't thought of as being very good in general. So being able to still come away with a top 100 player in a class where people aren't real excited about the point guards. I mean, Michigan needed a point guard in this class. You couldn't go without one, right? So the bigger picture thing I would think it says is that Michigan has really embraced this idea of landing kind of a backbone foundation of the program as far as top 100 players, and not just those top 25 players. Because a year ago, Michigan hadn't offered really any kids like Frankie Collins or Kobe Buffkin or any of these guys in the 2020 class at this point. It was all about those top 30 recruits. And now you're seeing that, well, if you build a foundation of top 100 recruits, you have a much better situation to go and chase whatever 5 stars you want until April. You're not counting on them to be kind of the linchpin of your roster moving forward, though.
And I saw talking about big swings and stuff like that. So the Davison kid, no, it's not Davidson, it's Davison, still put Michigan in his top 6. First of all, a very interesting top 6. Do you think that's still in play?
I had not heard about J.D. Davison being on Michigan's radar until they were in his top 6. They weren't in his top 10. So I don't know. I think Juwan Howard will have a phone call with just about any 5-star recruit. So
Sure.
there's probably some sort of interest there. But I think that there's definitely a possibility of adding another combo guard to the class. I think Michigan has a spot left for a center and then just a really good player. I don't really think that really good player has to fit in any positional mold. Like Harrison Ingram you'll think he's a combo forward, but he might be the best point guard on the roster if he was to come to Michigan. So I think you look at Hunter Salas, another kid who just got offered, who's kind of a point guard, but really more of a combo. I think Michigan's backcourt is going to be completely brand new essentially next season. So you need as many impact players as you can get. And if they can dribble, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
So I know that everyone's like, oh, you have one point guard, that's your point guard. But I think there's plenty of room for more ball handling on the roster.
Yeah. A couple things here. Like, first of all, on the Davison kid, was your eyebrow raised when it's his top 6? I love this. His top 6 is Memphis, LSU, Kansas, Alabama, and Auburn, plus Michigan. I raised an eye at that.
Yes, that's certainly a certain type of list.
Those 6 all have, or those 5 opposite Michigan all certainly have some things in common. But I don't know. I agree with you. I'm not sure if this is a real thing.
And Alabama and Auburn are the 2 home state schools who are supposed to be in a good position there. I'm not sure. Seems like maybe something else is going on to just put Michigan in there. Who knows?
So when I think, though, of the guard position beyond 2020-21, I mean, you got to remember that class is going to be 10 of 13 guys will be underclassmen. It's going to be this year. They're going to be one of the oldest teams in the country with a bunch of returnees, a bunch of guys who have played before. And then the next year, they're going to be the exact opposite.
There's no guard.
Shondy Brown.
There's no guard on that roster who we've ever seen play college basketball. Zeb Jackson will have played a year, but it's just completely unknown what you're going to have at that point. And I like a lot of these pieces, but I think they're good enough to be really good as sophomores and juniors.
Yeah.
It's going to be a stretch for Kobe Buffkin and Frankie Collins to be your starting backcourt as freshmen, right?
Yeah.
Just because of the situation. So the other option could be to go and get a transfer to help with that. Like Michigan's going to have a lot of flexibility as far as class size and everything else because there's just there's going to be so much turnover this year once again. Yeah,
I think first of all, that because of the type of player that Zeb Jackson is, as a sophomore, he'll be able to play both spots. You would think in theory, right? That he could play alongside of Frankie Collins, maybe. So that's one. And then in that class and that roster structure as a whole, I foresee them adding a center to what is currently there, or at least a big, and then pocketing and sitting. And, unless it's, one of these 5-star guys that they're in the mix with that you're taking, right? Unless it's one of those guys is ready to commit, I see them sitting on that scholarship and having it for transfers for all this other stuff. There's just, I don't see any addition coming soon unless it's one of those guys.
Yeah, I don't think you'd see another push for maybe a positional need at that point. But if you have an opportunity to land one of these top 30 kids that you've kind of been in the mix with, I don't think you say no by any means, right? I think there's probably a similar perceived impact of landing maybe a All-American or one of the top transfers, right? Both are ready to play pieces to add in.
Yeah. And then when you look at this year, and just kind of to touch on Zeb a little bit more, when you look at Eli and Mike Smith, right? 2 guys who have played 1 million minutes of college basketball. I think it's, to an extent, and especially with Franz probably being able to play a little bit of time at the 2, despite your misgivings about it.
No, I didn't. Okay. I don't have any misgivings.
I do think that it's an easy setup to go with the experienced guys a lot and give really, really heavy minutes to Eli and Mike Smith and utilize Franz at that 2 spot as opposed to going with, a freshman and kind of rolling the dice at times and things like that. On that, like, how important do you think it is to almost force yourself to make sure that you're getting Zeb Jackson out there and getting him real minutes as a freshman? Because like you just said, right, the next year, if he doesn't have a real role as a freshman, then what the hell is this going to look like 2021, 22?
Yeah, that's tough. Sometimes I don't really feel like having a real role always, like if you play 8 minutes a game instead of 2, are you really going to be that much more ready to play the next year? Like Xavier Simpson's freshman year was a disaster, and maybe he wasn't ready to play in November, but by the end of the year, he was
sophomore year.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he got there, right? So right. I think you need real experience, and I think you can't force feed that, right? Like if Zeb Jackson's not good enough to win games, Zeb Jackson's not going to play. If he is, I think there is a path to him providing something that no one else on the team does. He's probably going to be, just in terms of his athleticism and his length, a nice defensive piece. I think he's listed at 6'5" on the roster, which is something that none of Michigan's other guards can say. So that's a help. He is, I don't know where he's really going to be at as far as being able to run an offense, but maybe there's a situation where you can pair him up with Eli Brooks when Mike Smith's too small to play defense in a certain situation, right? There's all sorts of different solutions there. I think his playing time depends on how ready he is, not, we need him to be ready next year. I mean, there's just so much that's going to happen between then and now.
It's fair.
But that's always I feel like that's just the biggest trope that you always see. And I don't know how much truth there really is to it, actually.
I mean, I think you want your guys to have experience as opposed to not having experience. It's not that.
You'd rather win, right? I mean,
well, yeah, sure. I mean, you're not just going to sacrifice it, but like it's the Beeline case, right? Back in the day when he would have those December games against EMU or whatever. Well, they lost EMU, so that's a bad example. But you get my point, right? Houston Baptist comes in, and Derek Walton is still playing 36 minutes in this game, or whatever. You're like, you could maybe give some time to some of these other guys here. I don't know.
Yeah, there's also a case that the players you're actually going to need probably need as many game reps together as they can too, right? Like there's a lot of ways you can go.
Sure.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where Zeb falls. I still would say Zeb is more of a point guard than a 2 guard just because of he's not really natural playing off the ball, right? Like he's not a great shooter, which just makes his upside as a 2 kind of limited. And I do think he can be a point guard. So that would be interesting to see just how that all falls together, right? But he's still so young. It's going to be hard because, like you said, Eli Brooks and Mike Smith have played a lot of college basketball.
Right.
And Zeb Jackson came off the bench at Montverde last year.
And like we saw it last year, we could see it again this year, at least early on. Like, they could give Adrian Nunez at least a chance here, right? Like he could try to play his way back into this conversation the same way Foster Loyer at Michigan State, right? It's a guy who has been there and has, it's kind of a now or never situation, right? Like he needs to get in there and make some shots. And if he does, well, now that's, another layer to the conversation.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Big picture, Michigan's recruiting this summer. What would you kind of like? I'm impressed with how they've kind of pulled it together to land. I think right now it's a top 5 class. It's certainly a unique situation, but I don't know. I'm impressed with the overall success rate they've had in closing some of these recruitments. I think I tweeted out a stat the other day that Jawan's landed, I think, 5 top 100 kids in the first 2 classes, and Beeline landed that many over this last 5.
Right.
What do you give to their recruiting approach? Do you think, what do you think of the roster composition? Because last year I feel like we were a little bit like they're only recruiting combo forwards. What's going on here? I feel like it's a much more balanced approach.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need a big, and there's some serious names in the mix there that if they do land one of those guys, really changes the entirety of this class. So there's that. But like, let's just say that let's say hypothetically, if this class were exactly what it is right now, and that's the entirety of it, it would rank right there with some of the best that Beeline brought in. But you've also at the same time kind of face the issue of perception. And I know it's stupid and really amounts to nothing, but in terms of like people getting excited about it, you're going to be skewed because of what's happening up the road. Michigan State is just an absolute monster right now recruiting. And I think when Howard came in, it came with the expectation of, okay, well now Michigan's going to pull 5 stars, right? Like that was kind of part of this equation, no? So it's still early, and I won't be surprised at all if the big that they do land is one of those caliber players to step right in with or after Hunter Dickinson. So it's a good spot there to sell, and I think that they will get something there. But I'll put it this way: if this were a class that Beeline brought in, or if Michigan State was even having a normal recruiting period, I think people would be a lot more excited about this group that Howard has put together so far. You know what I mean? It's just a little like under the radar considering the quality of the class.
Yeah, it's definitely under the radar. And I think it's mostly to do with the idea of offering all of the sort of 5-star types first. Right, like just even in the way you approach it, right? Like Juwan Howard's strategy is clearly, like last summer, he offered every 5-star basically in the 2021 class. And then he's gone out and sort of supplemented those offers with new offers who are more realistic, seal the deal a little quicker, right? But it is funny just the reaction. Like I think there's just sort of this idea that like Frankie Collins, like people weren't super excited about Frankie Collins. He's the highest rated recruit in the class, but he wasn't Jalen Worley, who was a top 30 kid. So it's like, oh, well, that's not. But these are the kind of players who win in the Big Ten. Like you need top 100 players. And if you look through the kind of recruiting classes across the conference, there's only a couple schools that consistently pull multiple top 100 players in a class. So I think if you compare it to the rest of the Big Ten, Juwan Howard's still recruiting in that top group, right? Like there's maybe 2 schools really, like Michigan and Michigan State are recruiting at a level above everyone else. Obviously, Michigan State has like the top level of that class, but if there's not multiple top 100 kids in every class, so I think it's worth pointing out at least.
Right. But like, here's the thing: if they get, say they get one of the kids from IMG, right? Afton Reed or
Charles Bediako.
I was about to say Biacco. Bediako. They get one of those, right? I think suddenly people will look at the class as a whole and be like, oh, man, like it's a really good class. It just needs a hammer in terms of getting that, I don't know, the buzz or whatever. But that doesn't mean anything, right? Like in terms of playing winning basketball, I agree with you. Like this is a good group to come in and build around, the guys who are returning, and I'm sure they'll add an older player or two to the mix on top of it. But what they'll have coming back with this group, like that's a good foundation for this next kind of transitional wave in the program.
And it's a foundation that 8 months ago, you weren't really sure Juwan Howard was planning or laying in this sense, right? Like, I don't know that. I think that's an encouraging sign. And I also think it's funny, like perception is just such a crazy thing. Afton Reed, like he's really good. I think he's going to be a good player, and he has a lot of potential because he's big and really coordinated. It's not like he's going to come in somewhere and average like 20 and 10 and completely change a class. So that's the other thing that I think is funny about just overall perceived impact. Even like a kid like Jalen Worley, really good. I think Jaden Akins or Frankie Collins could have as good of freshman years as him based on everything else. They don't have the same ceiling maybe in all respects because they're not 6'6" and everything else. So I don't know. Just interesting to see how recruiting is perceived.
Yeah.
And then if you look down the road, how players then are perceived in college. So it'll be interesting to see that all play out. And it's going to be a real test of, I think, Juwan Howard's evaluation too, right? Like top 100 kid, sure. What we've learned is that not every top 100 kid is a star, and some are really good and some are pretty good. So it'll be interesting. Like, you look at these first two classes for Juwan Howard, how many kids do you think have the potential to be maybe all Big Ten first team players in their career?
In the first, like this class and
Yeah,
the one that's coming in?
20 and 21.
I'd say Dickinson for sure, even as an underclassman. I'd say maybe upperclassman Terrence Williams.
Okay.
You know, like a junior Terrence Williams. I could see that. I could certainly see. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, my two are Buffkin and Dickinson.
I was going to say, I like Barnes.
Okay.
I don't know, but like upperclassman Barnes, right?
Yeah, my point is, though, like, I think there's a really solid floor of rotation player with some of these guys, but you need to hit on some of those 60, 70, 80 ranked kids who become a top Big Ten player, right? So that's what you got to see. And that comes down to really just evaluation and coaching and a little bit of luck.
I'm just trying to pull up this one class here. 2017. Because, like, I mean, look at your seniors now, right? I'm trying to pull up Isaiah's, Livers, and Eli Brooks and look at their recruiting rankings. So Brooks was ranked 201st nationally. Isaiah Livers was ranked 133rd nationally. JP, I forgot he was in that class, was ranked 93rd. You know, that's pretty much in line with this class.
Yeah, I would say this class is better as far as ranking wise, right?
Yeah. He's a legit top 70 kid.
But when you're in like the around the 100 range, you're talking about 3-4 year players more often. So it's just, you got to build to get to that point. And the problem Michigan's going to have is there's sort of a giant hole left behind the 18 and 19 classes as far as when they become upperclassmen, with the chance that Franz is in the NBA and sort of that 18 class just didn't really come together. So you're going to need underclassmen contributors, right?
Right.
Because if you look at the 18 class, Brasdeikis gone, John's still here, DeJulius gone, Castleton gone. So you don't have that upperclassman depth potentially that you would be hoping if you're going to build kind of a steady program.
And it shows. It shows. It will show next year.
Yeah, not necessarily even this year, but the following year. It's just
exactly.
You're like, well, oh shit, now what?
Exactly.
And that's really the cost of the transition in a lot of ways that we have talked about. But yeah, could have Brandon Johns and Adrian Nunez as your only two players from those two classes.
Right. All right, let's slide over to Michigan State. How much have you gotten into Akins? I mean, I'm sure you're pretty well familiar with him because he was a Michigan target as well. But your initial kind of, I don't know, take on him.
I love Jaden Akins' game, and Michigan's been recruiting him for a long time, obviously, also, or was recruiting him for a long time. I think the big difference, like just what he brings, is the ability to make shots, and he's an elite shooter off the catch, off the dribble. I think it's just really easy to get on the court early as a young player in college when you can make shots. I think we kind of saw that with Derek Walton, right? Like, if you're just able to hit shots, then you don't need to be able to run the team right away. So I think that bodes well for him contributing early. I like his frame. I like his athleticism. I think if he puts it all together, can be really, really good. I think he's probably got a much higher ceiling than Frankie Collins, just as far as some of his physical tools. That's my initial take. What's your feeling on his game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that for a long time he was the obvious fit. It was just a matter of closing. And I mean, I agree with you. Like the word ceiling is what strikes me with him, where he's a dude who I could see being a legit pro prospect, all conference type guy, you know, going into his junior year, I think. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, and I think he is not the same sort of pure point guard as Collins, right? He very much can play off the ball too. Mm-hmm. And I think his reaching his ceiling will come a lot to like where he develops. Like, does he develop into that pure point guard? Because Michigan State can really operate really effectively with point guards who do other things than just dominate the ball, right? So Akins is really good in ball screens, but you can he'll run a bunch of off the ball stuff because you can just leverage his shooting, right? So I think that's a good fit for what Michigan State does. He's going to be good in transition, and I mean, it's just tricky. Like that, the family last year had Jaden Akins, Kobe Buffkin, right? Like all these guys who Pierre Brooks, a lot of ball handlers in kind of similar senses. So there wasn't like a dominant pick and roll guy. It was sort of by committee. So it's a little hard to get a great sense of them in that context, which is where I've watched probably the most film of him because of that kind of mix and match. Sure. So I think that flexibility, though, and him being able to be really efficient in that situation is a good sign.
Well, I also think it speaks to why this is a good fit for him and why he is comfortable going to Michigan State after Pierre Brooks committed and after Max Christie committed, right? Max Christie, 6'6" guard who's going to play on and off the ball. Pierre Brooks, 6'5" guard who's going to play on and off the ball. I don't know if Akins kind of sees himself as more of a lead guard into this type of situation. I have no idea. But, this mix and match, it doesn't need to be a give the ball to one guy and everyone else, the revolving around him, right? Like the planets. It's not, don't think it needs to be that way, especially with this level of talent. And who knows what else you have? Like Rocket Watts could be on this team, right?
Yeah. I think,
which is insane.
I think Brooks and Christie are guys who will do better with great point guard play, though. Like, I think they can play on the ball. I think Pierre Brooks at his best is a scorer, right? Who can slash kind of in situations where leverage has been created. And Christie's a shooter who's going to be way better as a shooter early in his career than trying to create. So I think a guy like Akins who can create probably fits really nicely with those pieces.
Sure.
So it's not even like everyone's going to be trying to do the same thing. I think those guys will naturally kind of fall into a good situation together as a class.
Yeah, I mean, I think all these guys are buying in on the idea of playing together. And Michigan State is doing an amazing job of selling, you're all going to come here, you're all going to be family, blah, blah, blah. And it is working. Because for them to get 3 guards of this caliber, walking into a roster that'll already have AJ Hoggard as a sophomore, right? Gabe Brown as a senior, and potentially Rocket Watts as a junior. I mean, that's pretty goddamn impressive. When you look at this volume of guards, what's kind of your immediate read on it? That these guys are willing to come in and fit, or that they're expecting half of these guys to not even be in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's volume of guards, but
combination of both.
Are you that worried about, at this point, guys who haven't really cracked? Like if you're a recruit, so you're Max Christie. Are you like, well, this Gabe Brown guy plays 15 minutes here and there and starts sometimes, but it seems to be on the bench and then see a tournament? Are you like, well, man, now he's going to take my minutes? It's not like it's different maybe with like if Aaron Henry was a freshman and started every game and you're like, okay, well, he's going to be around a while, right? So I think that I don't know that how many pieces there are kind of looking ahead on Michigan State's roster. You're like, well, he's a fixture of what they're going to do and he's not going to the league.
Right.
Like that's when it becomes hard to recruit. If like, say you're Iowa and Jordan Bohannon's the starting point guard as a freshman, you're like, well, where is he going? He's going to be the point guard for the next 4 years.
Right.
So I don't see that situation because I mean, it's not like I don't think Rocket Watts, if you were to go talk to him and be like, I'm going to be here 4 years, I think he knows where he wants to be and everyone else knows where he wants to be. So I think it's a pretty natural situation in that regard. I'm not sure really what to do with Hoggard, but again, it's easier to recruit around a guy who hasn't played yet, right? So maybe Hoggard is really good. Maybe we just don't know. So that's a good spot to be in.
I think it's interesting in all this and easily, kind of a forgotten guy in the conversation because when you look like Brooks and Akins Brooks is ranked like 65th in the country. Akins is ranked like 70th in the country, right? Really good top 100 kids. Hoggard was the same thing. He was like 70th in the country. It's the same, in terms, we haven't seen any of these guys play, but in terms of, I hate to use the word again, perception, like they're all the same. Like they're all of an equal caliber in theory, right?
Yeah, and I don't really know enough about Hoggard's game to know what to expect as far as I've pictured him more as kind of a combo than a true point guard. Is that like the perception as far as his roster fit moving forward, or is it like he's in the audition to play point guard this year?
I don't think he's viewed as a true point guard at any point. He's more of a get the ball downhill, attacking, physical guard as opposed to the, making reads out of ball screens and pull up jump shooting and passing and a dynamic kind of floor general. I don't think that's kind of how he's viewed.
So more almost like a Pierre Brooks than a Akins, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So it's a good situation. I think you add in. I mean, I just don't think there's so many guard spots in college basketball. You can play 4 guards at a time. It's just really hard to have enough guards on the roster to actually like scare someone away. You know what I mean? So I think that's I think you can't have too many quality guards. You're over here in this Big East t-shirt. You can know that.
I am wearing a Big East or old school Big East basketball tournament t-shirt. It's pretty sweet. Yeah. Because part of the conversation is, twofold here, right? No one's expecting Aaron Henry back either. And that's also going to be volume minutes available, and these guys fit into that spot, right? It's not like we're talking about point guards and shooting guards here, right? These guys are going to be playing all over the wings and running the floor and doing all kinds of shit. So, you're filling multiple spots with these guys, right? And
the Michigan State is looking at potentially 15, I guess potentially 16 players on the 21-22 roster if you're to go with every reclassification. So there's obviously an expectation that there will be some outgoing movement on that roster.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on this. Let's go through the roster here, right? Because by my count, potentially three over with reclasses. Does that sound right to you?
Yep, that's the chart I'm looking at.
So you would have the old men on the team would be Kithier, Lawyer, Gabe Brown, Marcus Bingham.
Hauser, Henry.
Do I have Hauser on this list? I do. I'm going to
there's separate
stop
group
there.
for you?
Okay. I'm going to start with this group. Of those four, right, I would say there's probably the potential that two of those guys are not on this team.
Okay.
All right. And then you get into Aaron Henry, Joey Hauser, Rocket Watts, Malik Hall, Julius Marble would be the returnees who are currently or were on last year's team. Right. I think there's consideration given to Hauser potentially testing the waters after this season. Watts as well. Henry, I'd be stunned if he plays as a senior. That leaves you with Hall and Marble, and who would be potentially just good upperclassmen, right? Pieces. Mm-hmm. And then the rest, I mean, this is still.
But if that list we just went through,
yeah,
not a lot of guards who you really trust in that group.
True.
So I don't think it's that crowded up
certainly
there.
No
as far as
ball handlers, right? I mean, other than Watts is really the only true, and even he is not the prototypical, right? But
yeah.
He's not like a turnover prone. Like you've seen him grab the ball, dribble off the bounce, and not dribble it off his knee.
If you're Jaden Akins, you can see a path to being the starting point guard
for sure.
It's not like there's a huge blocker. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And then this year's freshmen are Hoggard, Sissoko, and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm. And
then Pierre Brooks, Christie, and Jaden Akins. And then the wild cards, Amani Bates, and you can handle the pronunciation of an Enoch. We had it last week or 2 weeks ago when we did it. Boyake?
We didn't practice.
Boake?
Boache.
Yeah, that's right. There was like a CHE.
Yeah,
The KYE was a CHE. Boache. Enoch
Boache.
Boache. If they're reclassed, and I certainly think the latter is, right? I still come from the school of I will believe Amani Bates plays college basketball when Amani Bates plays college basketball. But I think they get Boache and that he will be reclassed. And yeah, there'll be some pieces that move out.
Interior
right?
pieces they'll have a really good opportunity to sort themselves out this year, though, right? Like, you're going to know who Michigan State's starting center is at the end of this year. Yeah. You're going to know who the Michigan State center is that doesn't play, and they're going to have to make a decision. Especially, it's tricky, though. Like, I mean, I'd be taking extra classes if I was going to be a senior on this 21-22 roster and looking to grad transferring, because it's going to be a tricky spot for whoever kind of falls out of that rotation, I think.
I agree. It just these guys are smart enough guys to kind of, I think, know the writing on the wall for certain things.
When was the last time Michigan State had a transfer out? It's been a minute, right?
2015. That would have been that Marvin Clark and what's his name, who transferred somewhere in like Ohio or something, right? Come on, you got it. Marvin Clark went to St. John's, right?
Javon Best.
Javon Best. Where did he land?
I'm not sure, but he was playing in TBT, I think.
He landed at St. Louis. That's it, not Ohio. Same difference. Yeah, those are the last transfers out of the program.
Is that a record? Like, we need
other than Braden Burke, right? But he was a non-scholarship transfer out.
We need to get Ken Pom to run some stats on this for the longest streak with no scholarship players transferring out.
I think Kyle Austin was actually trying to do the research on this somewhere. So I'll just wait until he does it.
I mean, that's just an insane stat given how many transfers there are every year.
That's incredible. It says a lot, I bet that these are things that are being, that gets sold on the recruiting trail too. Look at all these other programs, right? Guys going in and out.
Man, that's crazy. So 2015?
Like, there is no more overused word than culture, right? But I got something that says something about good culture.
It makes me wonder why everyone up there is so against the transfer eligibility.
That's a good question.
They're not even losing anyone. They should be in a great spot. You bring people in. They're winning the transfer portal by every measure.
Yeah. Well, Izzo will tell you it's a principle thing. He does it. He recognizes the fact that it doesn't really affect him. I think it's more the state of the game as opposed to anything else. But that's a whole different conversation. What else you got here? Anything? So let's talk this year. We did it. We kind of bounced around what we see the point guard spot looking like at Michigan this year. At State, I don't think they've announced this program. I don't think has said formally that Josh Langford's 100% playing this year, but he clearly is playing this year. He's on
some podcast
on this committee.
Right?
Yeah, I have no idea. He's on this committee that college basketball has for current players. Like, he's playing this year. So I think we can eliminate the question marks from that. Here's a question. Does Josh Langford start?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, who else would? There's not anyone obvious that would start over him in my mind.
Well, here would be the only thing is, I think if you're the staff, right, and you want to talk about players and mindsets and stuff like that, you could make the case. Look, Josh Langford can handle coming off the bench, right? He's 33 years old. He's played college basketball forever. But what about Gabe Brown? Like, what would a chance at being a starter do for Gabe Brown, if anything? I don't know. I see your face, but it's a hypothetical, right? That you could make the case that give Gabe a chance, right? See what he does.
All right, so no one tell Gabe Brown he's not starting until the season begins. Is that what we're going with?
Fair, right, exactly.
Give him the chance. But yes, Josh Langford starting.
Right, 2 weeks into the year, maybe you say, all right, it's probably time to put Josh in there. But I think you can make a reasonable case to give the guy who's waited for it his chance, right? Gabe Brown never foresaw Josh Langford coming back for a 5th year of college, right? Like, you want to talk about a guy that's like, what the fuck is this? It's Gabe, has to be. So that's a tough spot to be in for him. Like, this was supposed to be his turn, right? And now it's not.
Yeah, it's not his turn.
Exactly.
And there'll be opportunities there. I'm sure Langford will be on some sort of
pitch
minutes limit, sort of just get, you know what I mean? Especially early, right? Like, you want him to be healthy. But no, you're going to start Langford over Gabe Brown, and you're going to start Henry, Hauser, and some center, right? But Gabe Brown will play plenty. He'll be fine. I don't think he's. If he's good enough to start, then he'll start again. Like, you want to give all these minutes away to people when they're just so they feel better. You know what I mean? You want Zeb Jackson to be playing if he's not good enough. Everyone.
I don't know, man. We talk about how guys just pick up and leave at any given time. You have to. These coaches are re-recruiting at all times. Let's not act like that's not happening. So, and I know we've touched on this before, but Rocket Watts as a sophomore point guard, what's your biggest concern, and what's your biggest I don't know, your biggest selling point that you could see him being maybe like an all-league guy or whatever?
Well, he's going to shoot enough that you're going to have to talk about him as an all-league guy, because I think he'll score, right? I just think it's going to be a very different Michigan State offense with Rocket as your point guard than you've ever seen, but then you've seen for a while based on sort of what was Cassius Winston, right? So I think that you have playmaking in Joey Hauser, and I think you'll lean on that. I think you just need Rocket to be smart with the basketball, but he's also one of the only guys on the team who's a great dribbler, right? It's both of these rosters for Michigan and Michigan State are kind of short on elite ball handling, if you really look at it. So by that regard, I think you just have to stick Watts in there and say, what are you going to do? Let's make this work. I think there's enough there that he's not going to average 8 assists a game, but I think he'll be able to move the ball. Michigan State plays in a way already that moves the ball and relies on really everyone. And he can create offense by breaking down other guards in a way that I don't really see anyone else on the team doing.
Mm-hmm. Over, under 32% 3-point shooting for Rocket Watts next year.
Under.
Oof.
I don't think that's a huge. He's going to shoot a ton of threes, and they're going to be off the dribble, right? It's not like it's one thing if you're standing in the corner and you shoot 30% from 3, but he'll be like 30, 31% from 3. That's fine. You think he's not Cassius Winston. He's not going to shoot 40% on off the dribble threes. That's not normal.
Yeah. I think because of the volume he's got, I think you'd like to get him up around 34%.
Yeah. At low 30s, I think is
especially for the team as a whole too, because like you need 3-point shooting, right? And where's it reliably coming from?
Langford. So if you look at his stats last year, he shot 28% from 3, and 77% of his made threes were assisted. That's a little bit of a scary number because there's not really anyone to assist him those threes in this current system, right? As far as elite ball handlers, shot creators, you don't have Cassius Winston or Xavier Tillman passing the ball. So it's hard to imagine that he's going to shoot fewer assisted threes and then shoot significantly better from 3.
Because here's my concern. Like, if he's going to shoot at the volume that you're talking about and he's at 29 or 30%, like, that means that he's taking a lot of bad shots because I think, Langford is a proven shooter. Hauser shot like 42 or 43%, I think, at Marquette. I think Aaron Henry can probably be better than he was, I think, 34% last year. 35, let me see. 34% last year. Like, there's not a reason for Rocket to be taking 6, 7, 8 threes a game if he's shooting that percentage, right?
I think you're looking at it backwards.
Okay.
I think you should be looking at Rocket's 2-point percentage because that will really determine the quality of looks he's getting. Those are the shots he's going to be creating. It's going to be either he's going to be getting to the rim consistently or he's going to be scoring in the mid-range. And I think the fact that Hauser, Langford, even Henry have all potential to shoot well from three is going to allow him to really thrive getting to the basket, right? You're going to have that spacing around him. So maybe you should be looking at Watts's. I just think his 2-point percentage, if he's shooting 42% on twos, which like is pretty, like it's the number of guards will shoot, right? Because usually if you only get to the mid-range, you're shooting in the low 40s on those shots, and that's even good. But if you're getting to the rim, like he shot 57% at the rim, right? If he can get those looks consistently, which he did in January, February, March, and he did not do in November when he was really bad, those are the looks that you're like, okay, well, our offense is working. So that's the stat I would look at, not his 3-point percentage, which if you're shooting, it's not 29, 33, like it's not a huge difference.
There's a big difference between 29 and 34.
Okay. I just think Rocket's not on the team to be an accurate 3-point shooter. He's to create offense, get downhill, and play defense. He's a scorer, not a shooter. There's other guys who can just sit there and shoot threes.
Right. But he took 4.5 a game last year, and that was while only playing 22 minutes a game and playing alongside Cassius Winston. I'm just saying, if he's taking 8 threes a game, that's because the thing is that he has to play. So there's no quick hook, right? So he can just take all these shots and, it's not going to be Foster go get him every single time. Speaking of Foster, over 8 minutes a game.
What did he play last year? You have it up?
Yeah, he played.
I'll go over
7.5 minutes a game last year.
Yeah, I'll go over.
Has to be.
I mean, unless Hoggard's really good, right?
He played 7.5 minutes a game last year with Winston. That means his minutes are going to go up, and like I'm going to be. He's going to have a role on this team. I know people like.
Yeah, but he also
cast him aside, but
those per minute stats get so skewed. Like he didn't play 7 minutes in any of Michigan State's final 6 games last year. So like a lot of guys play. Like, will he play 8 minutes a game when the chips are down in a real game, right?
I mean, he played. Michigan State's numbers are always skewed too because when they beat teams, they beat the piss out of them and win by 20.
Yeah, Foster Lawyer was probably playing 20 minutes a game in December when Western and Eastern were coming to town. So those skew the numbers, and then you get a few DMPs. I guess he didn't have any DMPs, but
his conference average, conference per game, Foster 6.5 minutes a game, but so I don't know.
In a big moment, like he's going to have to be a piece of the rotation, I think, because of his experience, his shooting, you need that, I think, to make the team really work.
Yeah, like I don't think this is just an important year for Foster Lawyer just to prove whether Foster Lawyer is going to be a senior at Michigan State. Like I think it's an important year for Foster Lawyer because he's going to be a piece that they need reliably, right? And even if it's just getting the ball into the half court and engaging the offense and making an occasional three and at least holding your own relatively on defense. But if he's not checking one of those 3 boxes, they are vulnerable, right? I think.
Yeah, I think his shooting is like he'll shoot the ball, and that'll you can hang in there if you can shoot for it. I mean, he shot 45% from 3 last year. If you can get him,
where are you seeing that?
Lawyer? He's 18 of 40.
Oh,
Is that wrong?
I'm looking at his conference numbers too. Sorry. He shot 33% in the league.
All right. But either way, I think he's a guy, like his ability to make threes as an upperclassman has got to be his way to get on the floor, right? He's never going to be a great defender. He's going to be limited in certain ways just because of his size and athleticism. But if you can, as an upperclassman, you need to be able to carve out a role to knock down threes, and then that'll help everything else work, I think, and make that rotation work, because there's not a lot of perimeter. There's perimeter players. There's not true guards, right? That's really the risk, right? Aaron Henry is probably just going to be more of a point forward, I would say. I think he's going to have to do a lot of playmaking, but he's not a guy you're just letting dribble out against pressure and everything else at this point, really.
Yeah. So I got curious about his numbers, and so he did go 18 for 40 last year on threes, but he went 7 for 8 against EMU and Western. So the rest of the numbers are whatever. In addition to those two games, but all right. I think that's it. Do you have anything else?
I think that's it. I wouldn't be that worried about Watts as point guard. I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be all over the map as far as day-to-day
highly
experience.
Entertaining. Yes.
But I think there's potential there. I think he can have a really good season as a point guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be very different than the Cassius Winston experience.
I mean, I think I'll be going into next year considering him for my preseason all-league team, for sure. I think he's going to be one of the most electric players in the league. He's going to be one of the best defensive players in the league, period. And all the talent in the world. And, he's unafraid. He's going to take and make, I think, a lot of big shots. Yeah, I mean, he's one of the breakout players potentially in the country. Yep. It's not now. I don't know if this quite has the juice of the Xavier Simpson Cassius Winston rivalry that I'm putting in air quotes from over the past couple of years. But
what's the rivalry?
What do you mean?
We don't even know who Michigan's starting point guard is going to be.
I think the rivalry this year will be Franz versus
everyone.
I'd probably say Rocket, if we're being honest here. Yeah, I'll go with that. Franz versus Rocket.
Doesn't really bring the same juice.
We'll see. The difference is that those two might actually talk shit to each other. Xavier Simpson and Cassius Winston never talk shit to each other. While we all made it a big deal, those two never actually had any interaction that was stoking the fire, right? Not that I can recall, at least. Everyone else made a big deal out of the recruitment. Who got what scholarship? Who picked which school over what school? Everyone's just losing their minds. But those two were friendly.
They're never in the chippiness. They played in games that got chippy, but it was Nick Ward, it was Mo Wagner, it was everyone else who was getting chippy.
Right. And Xavier Simpson might have been chippy, but that was toward Michigan State. It was not really directed at Cassius. Yeah, and then Cassius just undressed Michigan all of last year. Well, not
until the
first
second
game.
time they played.
In the first game, I'm sorry. In the first game. One of the all-time performances, though.
That was. And then
the second game, man, I don't remember the second. Between Cassius and Winston, who got the best of who in the second game? I know Michigan won. Between
Cassius and Winston, is that like a battle with himself?
Between Cassius and Xavier.
No, Xavier played really well. He had 16 and 8. And Michigan just left Michigan State shooters open, basically, and they missed a bunch of threes.
Gotcha.
That's my cliff notes for the game of the two teams that you covered that you can't even remember. What a year.
And it all runs together. It's golf season, too. Did you see my tweet earlier?
About Brandon Johns?
Yeah, I've got Bandon Dunes on the mind, but I'm also had to write something up on Michigan, and I wrote Bandon Johns Jr., so.
You're losing it, man. You're looking rough. You got to get it together over there.
Yeah.
It's about to go on the road.
Falling apart. It's August. It's supposed to be smooth sailing at this time of year. Shit. But All right. That'll do it for this week. We do appreciate you listening. Please be sure to subscribe to both Hoops and The Athletic. That's what keeps this podcast going. Recommend this to your friends if anyone might be interested. And if you would be so kind as to leave us a review in the iTunes store, that is a great deal of help, or does a great deal of help for this thing. So thanks much. Be sure to tip those bartenders and servers, folks.